Yay, we're live. We're making goofy faces right before we went live. Welcome to our live YouTube broadcast today. We wanted to do a YouTube live to kind of talk about some of our infertility struggles and how long it took us to get pregnant, because the last YouTube live that we did when we talked about Nora getting pregnant, you guys, we got, I'm not kidding you, hundreds of messages,
possibly thousands.
Emails. We were so overwhelmed with you guys sharing your stories with us that, you know, and there's so many of you guys struggling. We feel like it's such a, it's become a taboo subject.
Topic.
Yeah.
And it's funny, it kind of proved it when we asked the question, when we posted a picture on our Instagram saying,
leave us questions,
and no one left questions, but we got so many DMs asking questions. It just goes to show people are still embarrassed. It's really not embarrassing.
It's like, not embarrassing because we've already now lived through it, but I remember, you know, when I was struggling in the beginning and I was considering doing IVF, I didn't want anyone to know. I literally didn't tell friends, I didn't tell family, I didn't tell anyone. So I understand where you guys are coming from and not wanting that information to be public, or, you know, being careful who you share that information with.
Because people are judgmental, like, no matter what. Like, thankfully, I kind of didn't care, only because I was fortunate enough where my husband is in medicine. So for him, he sees it as like medicine, you know, like he doesn't see it as like a struggle. He doesn't see it as, he's like, this is what's wrong. You go get treated. You know, it's like for him, that's how he sees it. So I was really, really blessed in that sense. So that gave me the confidence to not care what people say, what people think. I remember you did struggle with it a lot, and I would be like, who cares?
I struggled with it because I didn't know anyone who had done IVF, and I'm sure people did, and they just didn't tell me that they did. I literally only knew one friend who was like a distant friend who did IVF, and I like literally tried to like get information from her, but it was very new to me. And the reason why I also struggled from it is because a mutual friend that we knew had made comments about like IVF babies are fake babies, and I was so turned off by that, and I felt so judged, even though she didn't know that I was doing IVF.
Yeah, it's safe to say we're not friends with that friend anymore.
And it just, you know,
people make mean comments without knowing. Sometimes it's unintentional, but it really, people need to be a little smarter when they're speaking to other people, because you don't know. It could be we're going through our infertility struggle, someone else might be going through a different struggle, you know. Just like be careful what you're talking about. That's like one of the most important things. Like, you could be hurting someone without even knowing, you know?
And you don't know everyone's story. So, you know, bottom line, try to be a nice person. That being said, we did get all of your DMs together, and we have put together a list of all of the questions that you guys wanted us to address. So I have that on my phone, and we are going to be we're gonna go through that.
I'm just trying to pull up your question, like live questions right now. Okay. All right. So I see your comments this time, you guys. I know during the last live, we couldn't see your comments. So we have another computer here, and then this one here, and the questions. We're ready to go today.
Cool.
Okay, so one of the first questions I think we got so many of is our journey to pregnancy from beginning to now. I think we should leave that to the end, only because there's so many questions.
And that will
kind of explain it. So did you undergo any procedures or surgeries? And Ani and I are both going to answer these because she had a different infertility journey or fertility journey, and I had a different journey. So we're both going to answer them. So did you undergo any procedures or surgeries? What were the name of the procedures?
I didn't have to go, luckily I didn't have to undergo any procedures or surgeries, but during my IVF process, I did have overstimulated ovaries, and when I did my egg retrieval, which is when the point of which they literally take your eggs out, my body responded really, really poorly to that, and I was basically bedridden for about a week. And this just goes to show you that everyone does have a different experience. Nora was literally out that night, like out to dinner. She was like perfectly fine.
Yeah.
But Nora did have to go through some procedures.
I did have, so after my first failed IVF cycle, we did something called a water ultrasound, where they ultrasound the inside of you by like putting in some water, and then they could see if you have any polyps or any fibroids or cysts or any of that stuff. And we found out that I have 2 polyps. And I don't know why I had a different doctor at that time. I don't know why he wouldn't check me for that before spending $25,000. So needless to say, I changed my doctor after that. But I had 2 polyps. So once I changed my doctor, the first thing he did is have me go under to do a hysteroscopy, I think it's called, or a polypectomy. So I did have to go under anesthesia for that. It was super simple, super quick. Didn't feel anything. The next day, that night again, I was back on my feet again, and I was done with my polyps. And then the other surgery, it was after my miscarriage when they did the D&C, and that's when they remove the fetus. And that was really hard because it usually is about a 15-minute procedure. They had difficulty with me while they were doing it, and it turned into a 2-hour procedure. Yeah. I was there at 3, and I ended up being there until 7 o'clock because it turned out to be he needed to call another surgeon. It was a lot of complications, but everything was okay.
Someone who just tuned in asked what we're talking about. We're talking about infertility and our struggles,
our journey to success, our journey
to getting pregnant. When did you find out something was not okay? We both tried for a really long time naturally, and we just weren't getting pregnant. I ended up getting pregnant about 6 months after trying, and then I had a chemical miscarriage, so I miscarried right before the 6-week mark. And then after that, I just never got pregnant. So I was maybe at the point of 9 months, 8 months of trying when I finally went to go see a doctor. And literally I had every test under the moon done, and they finally determined that I had unexplained infertility. Which I'm now, I think, just attributing to the stresses in my life at the time, and, just having, certain negative things in my life that I no longer have. And you just don't know. It's so frustrating when they say, oh, it's unexplained, there's nothing wrong, but you can't get pregnant. So it's there is something wrong. Why can't I get pregnant?
That was the one thing that was really irritating, because another question that we had is what were you diagnosed with? That's the following question. For me, it was a 3-year struggle, and I was initially diagnosed with unexplained infertility. Yeah. But then things come up, the polyps came up. Then we found out that my cervix is a magic mountain ride, so I couldn't technically even get pregnant naturally. And then what else happened? So many things just would come up as I was. Oh, and then I found out I have a bleeding disorder after my miscarriage. So things come up as you're going through this journey. Yeah. So initially, it's unexplained because they do the 2 tests. Which one was the one where they put the dye in your stomach?
Oh yeah, I don't remember the name of it, but that one hurt so bad.
HCG or HSG, something. There was a test that they do initially when you're the first thing you do when you go to a fertility specialist is they take some blood to make sure you have enough eggs and everything's normal. Your thyroid is normal, because I know a lot of people have thyroid issues too that could cause infertility. And then they do the test where it's a scan. They put dye in there, and then they see if your fallopian tubes are clear, and if it's not, they clear it. But after that, they're oh yeah, everything's fine, go ahead and have kids. It's okay, it's another 9 months, why am I not having kids? Yeah. So before pregnancy, were you on birth control? If so, how long after you stopped did you become pregnant?
I was on birth control for 5 years, and I really strongly believed when I was told that I have unexplained infertility that it's because I was on birth control. It turns out that it really doesn't have anything to do with it. I've had multiple doctors and fertility specialists tell me that it did not affect in any way me getting pregnant. I actually had PCOS, which is polycystic ovary syndrome, and that means that there's cysts attached to some of my eggs. So birth control actually regulated that for me, and it really helped my body regulate itself. So in my specific instance, I don't think that it hurt, and I do think that it helped regulate me in some form before I decided to get pregnant.
I never used birth control, and thank God I didn't, because after I found out I have a bleeding disorder, it turns out that I can't use birth control because they cause blood clots, and I have a blood clotting disorder.
So many things.
Yeah. Okay. Before pregnancy, yeah, we answered that. Can you recommend fertility testing for males and females? So like we said, initially when you go to any specialist, they're gonna do the blood test where they check your levels. I think it's FH levels or something like that. But they check your, they know what to check for blood tests. Then they check, do the X-ray. And then for males, they check their sperm count and to see if it's
how mobile they are.
How mobile they are, and if they're swimmers or fast swimmers or slow swimmers. The shape,
how active they are.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like the shape even matters. Yeah. And then honestly, if it was me now going back into it, I would ask them to do a water ultrasound initially, just to make sure to get rid of the idea of if you have polyps, if you have any of that stuff. I would ask them to do a test to make sure I have no bleeding disorders, because I found out 1.5 years into my journey. Yeah. So that's the thing. These tests cost money, and the doctors don't do it initially unless there's something happens, because they want to, because so many people are like, oh, I don't have the money, or I don't want to spend the money. Why am I doing this test? You get so angry.
But having multiple failed IVFs is more expensive than getting these
exactly.
tests
done. So it's like, I rather pay a little more initially and not go through those problems. So it's funny when I mentioned the bleeding disorder, because it's something so many people I've talked to have, and it's something that they literally don't test for until, if you're not at a fertility specialist, they don't test you until you've had 3 miscarriages. Yeah. And that's crazy. The heartache of 3 miscarriages is like so bad. So I would highly recommend getting that test done as well. Where did you get treatment? Were you happy with your doctor?
Someone is saying that their video is not working. Can you guys let us know if videos are working?
Nora, my husband is 1 year older than me, so he's 36. Okay, where did you get your treatment? Were you happy with your doctor? So I switched doctors in between cycles. And I was obsessed with the doctor that got me pregnant. He got me pregnant after the first try, and I unfortunately miscarried, but he was so amazing. I went to HRC Fertility, yep, in Encino, and my doctor's name was Robert Bustenfar. He was literally
Tell him Nora sent you.
He cried with me.
He's like, a nice guy.
You were there like so many times. He was like, oh, where are your friends now? I got you pregnant. Yeah. So, because I used to always go with girlfriends, and he used to be like,
why are so many people here?
Why are you always bringing an entourage? I'm going to cry, because he was such an amazing doctor. The entire staff there, like my nurse was amazing. The treatment they gave me was like no other. And that's the one thing you want from your doctor is bedside manners. Yeah. It's so important. When they're so indifferent with you when you're there, it's like, this is something you're going through, you know, like you see your fertility doctor more than you see some friends during that time.
Sometimes you go once a week. It's crazy.
Yeah, or twice a week. Yeah. And I went to him literally once a week for 1.5 years. And he was just so great with me, and he treated me so well, and I don't know, he was just amazing. I highly recommend him.
I also switched doctors midway. So I was with a different doctor, and when the 1 year mark had finally hit and I still wasn't pregnant, I was so frustrated. I did all my tests with him. I did failed IUIs with him. And I was like, you know what, if I'm going to continue on to IVF, I just don't feel comfortable. I didn't feel like I was confident in him. So I switched doctors, and I ended up going to Dr. Wong. What was my doctor's?
Dr. Wong.
No, the facility.
Oh, I have no idea.
Okay, his name was Dr. Wong, and he is, I'll put it in the comments later. He was actually on Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And he was amazing. He was super professional, really nice. And what I loved about him is when I went in there, I was like so confused about IVF. Again, I didn't know anyone who had done it. And he sat down with me for like 2 hours and explained the entire thing from beginning to end. And I remember he explained it with candy to like make sense for me. And he explained the whole process to me. And after I left there, I was like, I feel confident in this guy. I feel like he understood me, and he made me feel calm, and he really understood my struggle. And I went with him, and I got pregnant after my second try of IVF. My first one failed.
Tips or advice on things that you should avoid during pregnancy. Is it safe to dye my hair? Okay, so this all depends on how you're getting pregnant. If you're getting pregnant through IVF, you have a long list of rules, that things that you're not allowed to do. You're not allowed to work out. You're not allowed to have sex. You're not allowed to dye your hair. You're not allowed to get your nails done. Hence why I didn't have my nails done for the first trimester, if you guys caught on. And then
that's how my mom knew I was pregnant, because I was too scared to tell everyone just in case I had bad news. My mom said that she knew I was pregnant because I had all gray hair and my moods were so bad. She's like, I knew you were pregnant. So
and then, so the thing with dyeing hair, you guys, is you could, after the first trimester, you could highlight your hair, but the reason they say don't dye your hair, like they actually mean like dye, like hair color, that you're not supposed to do the first trimester. But if you're getting pregnant naturally, I think you're still able to highlight your hair.
Again, best to just ask your doctor.
Yeah. How long did the entire journey take? Mine took around 3 years.
My entire journey took 2 years. And then the journey from starting IVF to the process of when they insert the embryo in you really depends on if you decide to do genetic testing, which can take up to 12 weeks. If you decide not to and you do a fresh transfer, it could be closer to about 4 weeks.
Yeah. What made you see a doctor? How long after trying?
I was trying for 8 or 9 months when I started to see a doctor.
I was trying for about 6 to 7. I'm impatient. Because I was older. I wasn't going to waste my time. You know, if you're in your 20s, it's fine. Take your time. But
and
if you're
at
over
that point too, you saw that it was taking me so long. You're like, I'm not going to wait 8
Yeah, I'm
months.
like, I need to get tested. How did you stay positive and keep your faith? This is one of the hardest things to do. Because everyone's there to be like, if you have your friends around you and they're like, it's gonna work out, it's okay, but it's still so hard to stay positive and keep your faith, because everyone around you is getting pregnant, and you feel like
you only notice pregnant women,
and you feel like you're literally the last person on this planet to get pregnant. And obviously you're happy for everyone, and that's not even the point of anything, but it's hard seeing that and then getting bad news from the doctor, you know? But the one thing I have to say is, like, I literally never gave up. Like, no matter how down in the dumps I was, like, I would go home and I would cry after a doctor's appointment. But when I used to go to my doctor's appointment, I used to always be happy. I used to always be positive. Like, I remember after my miscarriage, I walked into my doctor's office and he literally was like, he had tears and he hugged me and I'm like, let's do this. What's next? What are we doing next? You know, because, and he told me like, that's energy that you had was the reason you got to where you did, because like, you have to stay positive.
And you know what? Surround yourself with positive people. Get rid of negative people in your life. You don't need them. Like, I would come home and cry and my husband was so amazing and so supportive, and then I would go to work and cry and Nora was there and she was so amazing and so supportive. And, you know, just surrounding ourselves with this like circle of amazing friends really does help you.
Someone's asking, by trying, do you mean just sex, or were you doing ovulation sticks and all that?
Ovulation computer.
Yeah.
I make $200 with a damn computer.
The one thing about that stuff is, like, if you are in your 20s, honestly, just have fun at first. Like, just have sex. Don't turn it into like a computer thing, you know, because after that, it's not fun. Then your husband gets all weird, and then it's not like sex anymore. You know, it's more like, oh, we need to do it. And it's just like, it takes the fun out of everything. At any point, did you think about adoption if IVF didn't work?
Yeah, I did.
I mean,
I didn't get to the point where I was like actively looking for adoption, but I feel like even now, if there was ever a child in need that was like came into my life for any reason, I would absolutely be open to that. I
had thought about adoption, but not as like because I can't get pregnant. I've thought about adoption just in general. So I wasn't like, oh, I can't get pregnant, I'm gonna adopt kind of deal.
How did you deal with people constantly asking, when are you gonna have a baby? That was the worst. Seriously, there is no worse question, and now I will never, ever, ever do that to anyone. in the beginning, I was really nice and polite about it. And then towards the end, I was like really bitter. I'd be like, you'll know when I decide to have a baby. And then I think when I would like respond like that, people would be like, okay, so maybe there's something I shouldn't be asking. I started out nice, and then at the end I was really, really mean about it.
I was, I think a little people were more kind of chill about it with me, because I feel like when we started trying, like everyone knew. We're like, because before that my husband was very clear, like, we're gonna be married for 1 year and we're not trying, you know. So after that, like when it wasn't happening, it was like people knew, so they were better about it. But I did have distant cousins that I ran into, and they threw comments like, are you pregnant? I wasn't even getting the when are you gonna try. Everyone knew I was trying. I got comments like, you're pregnant, because I had gained weight because of the steroids and the medication I was on. So that wasn't fun.
Someone is asking, do you recommend staying on birth control when you're in your mid to late 20s? When do you recommend getting off birth control? That's a question you should honestly ask your doctor, because every woman is different. Like Nora said, she wasn't even supposed to be on birth control because of blood thinners. I responded better to birth control. Everyone is different, so that's definitely a question that's better suited for your doctor.
How did you mentioned you had a bleeding disorder. How did you find out? I did a blood test after my first miscarriage, and they found out that I do have a blood clotting disorder. I've never had a blood clot in my life, but I do have the disorder. So throughout my entire pregnancy, I have to take shots every single day, which is not fun. And then 3 months after I give birth, I still have to, for 3 months, I have to still be on the shots. So.
Someone is asking, Ani, how long did you breastfeed? I breastfed for about 2 months. It was really, really hard for me to breastfeed because my body didn't make enough milk. And that has to do with, I had a difficult delivery and I lost a lot of blood. So my body was busy trying to make blood and just wasn't making enough milk. So I tried my best for 2 months. And then after that, I just, there was nothing. So I went to formula.
How far along were you when you had a miscarriage? I was 7 weeks going on 8. We didn't hear a heartbeat and my levels were really low. So it was kind of like, it's time.
I was 5 going on 6.
How long was the IVF process from start to finish? How long was IVF? If you're doing IVF just one time, like when you go to a doctor, they don't just throw you into IVF. There's like different steps. Like they try an IUI unless like there's an issue and you know that like your only resort is IVF. But if you're going and just doing IVF, honestly, it's not that long. It's like 12 to 14 days for shots.
Yeah.
And after that, like Ani said, if you're doing genetic testing, they remove the eggs, they freeze it, and they do the genetic testing. So you get
that can take 2 to 3 weeks.
So you get your period, and then basically on the next cycle, as long as you don't have any cysts, they implant the embryos back in, and you could possibly be pregnant. Mine was actually quicker. Like because I did the 4 of them, which were the long process. And then the 5th one, my doctor's like, we're going to switch things up and do.
No, you said that.
Well, I told him, because I used to always say, let's do this. Let's do the 3-day. Let's do the 3-day. And fresh cycle. So a 3-day fresh cycle, you guys, is something that's like not common anymore. Like back in the day, that's what they used to do. But these days, they don't do that. Like the textbook, you go to the doctor, he's going to do a 5-day frozen with genetic testing. With me, after the 5th time, my doctor was like, okay, we're switching things up. We did a 3-day fresh transfer. So what that means is after I did my shots for 12 days, we removed my eggs. 3 days later, they put it back in me and I was pregnant. Like 2 weeks later, I was pregnant. So it was like really quick. And I had just gotten off a failed cycle. So it was like really like, I didn't have time kind of like to mourn my failed cycle because I got right back into it. And I was not textbook. After 3 years, we learned that I was not textbook. And it was funny because my doctor said, of course, you would throw me off like that.
Speaking of doctors, I didn't have the answer earlier because I couldn't remember it, but my doctor, Dr. Wong, is at Reproductive Partners.
Nora, do you plan on breastfeeding or bottle? Do you feel like one is better than the other? I know people feel differently. I haven't decided yet. I was told to bottle feed only because I want to have a child immediately after because I am going to be turning 36. So like, as you guys know, as you get older, your chances of having a baby decrease. So I was told if I want to go straight into it, to give birth vaginally, to try to give birth vaginally if you can, and try to go straight into bottle feeding. But I haven't decided yet. I feel like that's something I'm just gonna, like, once I have my baby and I'm gonna see her, that's when I'm gonna decide like what I want to do.
It's such a personal matter. There's no right or wrong for anyone. It's whatever works best for you, and you'll know when you give birth what that right answer is for you.
Yeah. Did you tell any family members or friends about the whole process?
I actually kept the information from my family until very I told my mom, and then I didn't tell anyone else until very recently, when I started to like really talk about it. And then other than that, honestly, it's something that I just kept between me and my husband and Nora, because Nora was taking me to my appointments, and she was, there for me. It's hard not to share that information. Now, if I had to do it all over again, I would be more open about it like I am right now, because I feel like it does help people. It's you're educating other people who may be in the same shoes as you, and B, it's just nice to have people to talk to about it.
My mom was there with me throughout the entire thing, calling me every day, asking me questions. And my girlfriends were there, Ani and our like crew who were there for me throughout the entire thing. My husband, and that's the one thing, you guys, that you have to understand when you're going through this process, is because I just recently watched the show Friends from College, and in there the girl's going through IVF, like, and it's funny because they show it detailed, like she does the shots and everything, and she's just so mean to her husband throughout the entire process, like it was a failed cycle, and she was just like, she was acting like the only victim. Don't forget, your husband is a part of this as much as you are, and it's hard to be like, you don't understand what I'm going through, but they do. They're helpless as well. They're trying to help as much as they can as well. So be supportive of each other, because like we were so lucky because we stayed positive. Like we had each other to talk to. And then with our husbands, it was like nothing had changed. This is just something we're going through. And we were lucky that they were supportive and they were positive with us, and they were just like really there for us. So
absolutely.
Go Jonathan and Patrick.
Best husbands ever. We love you.
Have I decided on my baby's name? I have not yet.
I guess every day.
She does. Ani said she won't even tell me she's guessing. I'll just get a girl's name.
Question mark?
And I'm like, what is this? And then I'm like, oh, she's sending me baby names. I have a few. Like, we have a few, and we're trying to figure it out. I think we're gonna keep our list at like 3 to 4, and then when the baby's born, see her and then pick the name. I feel like we are picking a name before I have the baby. I don't know why.
Someone's asking about Sebastian's timetable.
Meals and everything.
We're actually doing a video on that next week.
Yay! Do you want any more babies? Yes. I actually wanted triplets, guys. I was like, Doc, give me triplets. Didn't work out. Anyways, I think we got
most of the questions in. If we didn't get a chance to answer your question, just leave a comment on this video and we will make sure to get to you guys.
Or you could DM us on Instagram if you don't feel comfortable leaving a public comment.
Thank you so much for tuning in, guys. Hopefully, us sharing our journey with you guys was educational and it can help you or help a friend in any way. Most importantly, just stay positive and surround yourself with positive people. Right?
Yes.
Bye, guys.
Love you guys. Bye.